The first thing you should do at any job site before you start unloading is measure your opening. First, measure the width. Then measure the height. Also measure the headroom above the opening to make sure you have enough room for the type of tracks and springs you have. Once you have verified that the door you have will fit, begin unloading. There are several different ways to set up your work area. No matter which way works better for you. Just know that not every garage will be completely cleaned out, so sometimes you may have to adapt and do things differently from what you're used to. When setting up your sawhorses, make sure they are supporting about 2/3 of the width on the door away from the end of the sections. For example, on a 16-foot wide door you should have about 2.5 to 3 feet hanging over each end of the sawhorses. Now every garage is different, so when you're out in the field, sometimes you will come across garages that have no other way in or out. So it's important to get in the habit of bringing in all the tools and materials you will need to get the door installed. Once you have your sawhorses in place and your workspace ready, unstrap the door on the truck. Every door you install will be different in size and weight, so it's always important to pay attention to the balance point on the sections while moving them around. Once you have the sections of the door unstrapped, begin unloading. This door is a Dalton 90-100 total pack, which means the sections, springs, tracks, hardware, and weather stripping is all in the box. This adds quite a bit of weight, so it's important when setting up your work area to make sure you move any tripping hazards or building materials that may be in your way. Gently set the garage door sections down on the sawhorses so that you don't damage the sections. On this model door, I prefer to bring the bottom and top box in first. Then I bring in the lock and intermediate box second. I keep all sections closest to me on the sawhorses. Every door you install will have information about the door on the end of the sections or on the box. Like I mentioned before, this door is a Dalton 90-100 model. On the label it tells you that this door is a 16 by 8, white, vertical short panel or VSP, and the label also tells you that this door has long Stockton windows. Now that the sections are in place, you can begin opening up the box. Be careful when cutting open the boxes to not damage anything. Next, I flip the box open so the cardboard is on the other side of my sawhorses. Then, I very carefully score along the end of the section to remove the plastic protective covering Dalton puts on their sections. You can do this now or once the door is installed, but it must be removed before you leave the job site. Once the protective plastic is removed, I flip over the number 3 intermediate section. Remember to be careful to not damage the sections while moving them around. The cardboard I flipped onto the sawhorses earlier helps to prevent damage. Next, remove the horizontal tracks from the number 2 section. They are secured to the section's end cap with a 5/16 screw. Remove the hardware box and set it off to the side or on a table if you set your workspace up with one. Next, lean up the vertical tracks against the wall, out of the way for now. Now set the horizontal flag in the quick connect slots on the horizontal track and hammer the bottom of the flag until it is fully seated in the quick connect holes. Once the flag is attached, lean the horizontal track up against the wall on the correct side of the door opening. Then, flip the other horizontal track over and repeat the same process for attaching the horizontal flag bracket to the horizontal track. Lean the horizontal track up against the wall on the appropriate side of the opening. Discard any other packaging materials on the section. Then, flip the number 2 section to remove the plastic coating off the front of the section. Again, you can do this by scoring the ends where the coating goes underneath the end cap. As you remove the protective coating, it is also a good time to look over the sections for any damage. The manufacturers are more likely to cover damaged sections if you get a picture of any damage while they are still on the sawhorses. Next, flip the number 2 section back over and move it onto the number 3 section. Be careful not to scratch or damage the section. Then, flip the cardboard out of the way. Cut the strapping on the next bundle or cut open the cardboard on the next bundle of sections and flip the cardboard open. It is very important to check to see where the bottom rubber is so that you don't accidentally cut it while opening the box. Flip the cardboard open, remove the hardware box, and set it up to the side near the other one. Next, flip over both sections so that the bottom section is on top and the bottom rubber is facing you. Sometimes the manufacturer leaves the bottom rubber way too long, so if that is the case, cut it back so that it sticks past the end of the door 1/4 to 3/8 inch. Then, remove the protective coating on the front of the section the same as before, scoring the ends if needed, and inspect the section for damage. Next, flip the bottom section back over, being careful not to scratch the outside of it. Then remove the 3-inch strut that is fastened to the end caps of the section with a 1/4-inch screw. Move the strut off of the bottom section and onto the cardboard. Then grab both of the hardware boxes you set aside before and open them up. Take out what you need at this point. This includes the cable and drum assembly, 8 rollers, track brackets, and vertical flag brackets. Open up the cable and drum assembly. Then unravel the cables. Next, take the left side cable and hook the loop end of the cable onto the Milford pin of the bottom fixture. Then, grab 4 rollers and put them into the pre-mounted hinges on the sections. Then, grab the right side cable and 4 more rollers and repeat the same steps on the right side of the door. Remove the empty hardware box from the section. Then move the other hardware box with the top fixtures, winding gears, and 2 rollers off to the side or onto your hardware table if you are using one. Next, take out the installation manual. In the manual, you will find a chart that tells you where to mount your quick-turn track brackets. Our door is an 8-foot-high 4-section door, so our brackets will be a number 3 in the bottom, a number 7 in the top, then a number 7 in the middle. So you will use number 3s first, number 7s in the second set of holes, then number 7s again. Stand the vertical track up to see the quick turn holes. These are the sets of holes you will turn the track brackets into according to what the manual told you. Starting from the bottom set of holes, you will use the number 3 track bracket and turn it clockwise into the bottom hole. Then number 7s in the top hole, then number 7s in the middle hole. Use a hammer to turn the track bracket until it is perpendicular to the vertical track. Next, you will install the vertical flags. Using the same method as the track bracket installation, put the flag bracket into the quick turn hole on the track with the flag being perpendicular. Then quarter turn it until it is in line with the track. Repeat this for the other side. This is how your tracks will look when fully assembled. Stand your tracks up on the appropriate side of the opening. Now that we have assembled our tracks and stood them up on the sides of the opening that they need to be, we can start stacking up the door sections. Making sure your cables are not going to catch on anything, and making sure you are in the center of the section, flip the bottom section into the opening. Next, you will level the bottom section. This is one of the most important steps to garage door installation. If the floor is not level, start on the side that doesn't have to be lifted up. In this case, our floor is level, so it doesn't matter which side you start on. Before you mount your tracks, make sure the bottom section is centered in the opening so that when the door is fully installed, the weather stripping will cover the end of the door. Once the section is level and centered in the opening, you can mount your tracks. Make sure your cable is behind the rollers in the section. Then lift the track about 1/4 of an inch and lag the second track bracket from the bottom of the track to the wall, using a wood lag provided by the manufacturer. Next, take your drum and cable and drape it over the top of the track. This way you don't have to worry about it being behind the rollers while you install your other sections. Like I said before, leveling your door is very important, and so is leveling your tracks. You can do this by measuring the distance from the top of your track to a specific spot on each side of the door. As you can see on the right side, the top of my track is sitting at 65 and 5/8 inches to the top of the rib. Now move to the other side. Make sure your cable is behind the rollers. Then, set the track into place. Measure the distance from the top of the track to the same point on the section as you did on the other side. Make sure the measurements match. Then, lag the second track bracket from the bottom using the provided wood lag. Don't forget to pick up your drum and drape your cable over the top of the track, the same way you did the other side. Again, this helps keep the cable where it is supposed to be while you install more sections on the door. Again, I cannot stress enough the importance of leveling the door and the tracks, so I always double-check my measurements. Now that the bottom section is set and the tracks will hold the next two sections in place, let's move the weather stripping off of the top section and place it outside so it is out of our way. Then, place the top strut on the top rib of the door. Flip the cardboard to protect the top section. Then, standing in the center of the number 2 lock section, grab a hold of it. Keeping it balanced, flip it overhead. Then, set the section into place, getting both rollers in the top of the tracks. This takes a lot of practice, so don't be discouraged if it's very difficult the first time. Once the second section is fully in place, making sure the bottom is seated properly, repeat this process with the number 3 intermediate section. Again, try to get the rollers into the tracks on both sides and be sure that the section's tongue and groove are fully seated. Before you secure the sections together, check to make sure the ends are aligned. Make sure the end of the sections are flush on both sides because sometimes the section lengths can vary and you may have to split the difference. Using the door zips provided, begin securing the sections together. Make sure the screws are tight, but not over-tightened to where they strip out. Once the sections are screwed together, it's time to fully secure the tracks. Make sure you adjust your spacing between the tracks and the sections. This spacing should be between 3/8 to 1/2 inch. Fasten the remaining track brackets to the wall using the wood lags provided by the manufacturer. Once all of your track brackets are secured to the wall, place your ladder near one side of the tracks. Using a torpedo level, and making sure you keep your spacing in mind, fasten the vertical flag bracket to the jambs using the provided wood lags. Next, you will install the horizontal track by lifting it up, sliding the quick connect hole onto the flag, then downward to lock it in place. Then, bolt the two flags together and tighten the bolt where the horizontal track sits level. Again, this step takes some practice to make it look easy. Sometimes you may have to use your shoulder to pick the track up while you use your hands to tighten the bolt where it needs to be. After this step is complete, move the ladder to the other side and repeat the process. Once the tracks are completely installed, it's time to build the top section. First, you will have to bolt the roller carrier onto the L-shaped bracket with two courage bolts. Leave these bolts loose for now. They will be tightened later. Mount the top fixtures to the door using 4 door zips in the outer 4 holes. The bottom set of holes in the bracket should be in the second set of holes from the bottom of the top section. Slide a roller into the top fixture. Then, using the door zips provided, secure the strut to the top of the door. Make sure when you're pushing down hard while drilling, Support the underside of the section at the same time to prevent any creasing from the sawhorses. Repeat this step for the other side of the section. Next, locate the center of the door to install the opener bracket. Wayne Dalton 9100s have a dimple in the middle of the sections to make this easier, but using a tape measure works as well. Using the self-tapping door zips provided, secure the opener bracket as shown to the top of the door. Finish securing the strut. There should be door zips securing both sides of the strut every 3 to 4 feet. Once you have finished hardwiring the top section, place your ladder near the center of the door. Then, flipping the section overhead, put one roller into the track by holding the section on an angle, then set the section into place. Make sure the bottom of the section is fully seated in the tongue and groove. Move to the left side of the door and put the top roller into the track. Then, check to make sure the ends of the sections line up and are flush. Using 7/16 socket, set your top fixture so that when you look at the edge of the door, the gap between the sections and the back jambs are equal the entire height of the door. While you are still on the left side of the door, measure the height at which the center of the spring should be at. Once you have that measurement, you are ready to install the Torquemaster spring tube. The sticker on the Torquemaster spring tube always goes on the left side of the door. Lift up on the left side of the tube, sliding the spring inside towards the right side of the tube. Then go to the right side of the tube and slide on your center carrier. Once the center carrier is on the tube, and while holding onto the spring and the end of the tube on the right side, lift the tube to get the left spring to slide and protrude out on the other side. Then, when both springs are protruding out, grab the tube in the center and set the spring into place. Once the spring tube is in place, lag it to the wall using the wood lags provided. Double-check that the spring line looks level, as well as check the measurement you took while you were on the left side of the door. Adjust if necessary. Once you are satisfied that your spring is level, then move to the left side of the door to start assembling the spring line. Take the left side cable drum that you previously draped over the vertical flag and bring it back to the inside of the tracks, making sure the cable is behind all of the rollers and is free. Then slide it onto the Torquemaster tube, making sure the end of the spring is still protruding out of the drum. Then place it into the U-shaped notch in the top of the vertical flag, making sure the cable is on the back side of the drum closest to the wall. Next, grab the left side spring gear bracket and slide it onto the end of the spring, lining up the splines in the gear with the splines on the spring. Then, secure it to the flag with a 5/16 carriage bolt, washer, and nut. Then, using a wood lag, secure the bracket to the wall. Next, using a flathead screwdriver, loosen the set screw in the drum that holds the cable in place. Pull the cable to eliminate the slack, then tighten the set screw back up. Cut the excess cable, leaving about 6 inches of cable sticking out of the drum. Then, creating a loop, tuck the end of the cable back into the other hole on the drum. This will leave a little cable for any future adjustments if needed. Next, using the Torquemaster winding tool from Dalton, slide it onto the end of the left side spring, set the counter wheel to 0. Then, using a 7/16 nut driver bit on your drill or impact, add 4 turns of tension to the spring. As you add tension to the spring, the counter wheel will move, showing you how many turns you are adding. Once you have 4 turns, reverse the drill slightly to release the winding tool. You can also add tension with a 5/8 ratchet wrench and count the number of turns using the black mark on the plastic gear. Move to the right side of the door. This is how your spring will look sitting in the U-shaped notch in the top of the flag. Just like the left side, slide your drum onto the end of the tube, leaving the end of the spring protruding out, and making sure your cable is on the back side of the drum closest to the wall. Then take your right side Torquemaster gear and slide it onto the end of the right spring, aligning the splines in the gear with the splines in the spring. Once this is done, secure the gear bracket to the flag with a 5/16 carriage bolt, nut, and washer. Then, using a wood lag, secure the bracket to the wall. Once the bracket is fully secure, using a flathead screwdriver, loosen the set screw for the cable. Then, pull the cable until it is taut and free of any obstructions. While holding the cable tight, tighten back down the set screw. Cut the excess cable, leaving about 6 inches. Then tuck the cable back into the drum, creating a loop in case of any adjustments later on. Next, slide the Dalton winding tool. Set the counter wheel to 0, and using a 7/16 socket or nut setter on your drill or impact, wind the spring. Dalton has a set amount of turns for the Torquemaster springs, which can be found on the tag on a gear bracket or in the install manual. For this 8-foot-tall door, Dalton requires 18 turns on each spring. Once you have reached the desired amount of turns, reverse the drill to release the winding tool. Again, measure to make sure your spring is installed at the same height on both ends of the spring as well as the center. Adjust the spring height if necessary, then fully secure the center carrier with a second wood lag. Now, before you fully wind the other spring, make sure you fasten the hinges onto the top section of the door, as well as check to make sure you did not miss any other hinges throughout the door install. Once you have made sure all hinges are fastened, go back to the left side spring and finish adding tension. Remember you already added 4 turns to this side previously, so set the counter wheel on the spring tool accordingly. Once the springs are both wound, take at least 1 pair of vice grips and slowly open the door, but do not open it so that more than 2 sections are in the horizontal track. Then vice grip onto the track above a roller so that the door will not open any further. Not doing this can result in the garage door fully opening with no support on the back of the tracks. This could cause the door to rip off of the wall, so don't do that. After the door is partly open and secured in place, it's time to backhang the tracks. On standard radius tracks with trolley-type garage door openers, the horizontal tracks should be installed level. Using a level, take your measurement from the bottom of the track to the ceiling. Then, using a stud finder if necessary, measure how long your angle iron needs to be for the ceiling. You will need 1 piece of angle iron for the ceiling and 2 for the drop and the kicker. Once you have it all cut, bolt the bottom of the drop to the horizontal track. Then make sure the drop is plumb and make a small mark on the ceiling to mount your next piece of angle. Making sure you are mounting to a rafter or floor joist above, secure the ceiling angle with at least 2 wood lags. Then attach the drop, making sure your angle iron is straight and plumb. Once you are satisfied where your drop is, bolt on your kicker. This helps brace the horizontal track from any side-to-side movement as the door opens and closes. Making sure your backhangs are as straight as possible, be sure to tighten all bolts. Repeat this process on the other side of the door, being sure you are fastened to lumber underneath drywall, as well as making sure all of the bolts are tight. Once you are confident that your tracks are properly secured to the ceiling, you may remove your vice grips and slowly open the door. Then check the track spacing on your door and adjust as needed. Open and close the door a few times and adjust any part of the track that needs it. Make sure the joint where the tracks meet is a smooth transition. You may have to slightly bend tracks occasionally to make that smooth transition possible. If this is not done, it can cause the rollers to wear out prematurely. Thanks for watching and good luck.